All right, everybody, we are back again for another episode of the Coaches Compass. Now, remember, as you all like to ask me, I don't know what episode we're on. We just continue to record, continue to bring on cool guests from all across the world. Now, remember, hit that like, subscribe, comment button down below so we can continue to have this thing grow and continue to bring on cool guests from all across the world. And I am with another special guest with me today. I've got Coach Alex. He's the Assistant Director of Sports Performance at California State University, Fullerton. Coach, thank you and welcome to the Coaches Compass.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Man, coach, we were talking a little bit off air about, just the journey of a strength conditioning coach, you being from New York and kind of going to school in Florida and everything. I know I've looked at your resume and everything. You've been a lot of places. When did you realize that coaching was more than a job and it was your calling?
I really got into coaching early on. Obviously, I started interning when I was a freshman in college, but I really knew that I wanted to coach. I would say maybe 2 years prior to that, as a classic, you have a great strength coach at some point in your life that really makes you want to end up being a strength coach. And I had a coach, his name was Nick Serio, who was my high school baseball strength coach. And that was heck, I say 2 years before college, but that could be dated back to almost like seventh, eighth grade. I really enjoyed being in the weight room and doing, just training for baseball. I was a baseball player growing up. I played all through high school, never played in college, but I loved sports. I loved baseball. And one of the things that we did as a kid, there was a private facility near me where you go and you take baseball lessons and so forth. And so they had a winter program that they called Fierce that was connected with the sports performance facility that was right behind the baseball facility. And we'd go 2 times a week to go do, it was basically like group fitness class, but for us in seventh and eighth grade, you're pushing sleds, you're never getting under a barbell or anything. But I loved the atmosphere of building with my teammates and, and getting after it. And so that really was where it's like, I got the coaching bug in a sense. I knew that was kind of the area that I wanted to do or wanted to be in. And so I was like, all right, growing up in New York, it's not like the SEC areas.
Yeah.
It's not like the South. So to me, it was like, all right, well, I want to be a professional baseball strength coach. I love baseball and professional is the highest level. And so that was always in the back of my mind. And I was like, all right, well, I see a guy go down on the field and I see some guy run out and go and help him. Like maybe that's what a strength coach is. And so then I was like, oh, that's athletic training, athletics and training. That's exactly what I want. Soon found out that that was not what I wanted, as far as researching what all that was, because I didn't want to be, rehabbing the injuries. I wanted to help prevent them and get people bigger, faster, stronger. And so, long story short, it was kind of in that high school area. I knew that my baseball career wasn't gonna take me to the promised land, and so I started thinking, how can I stay around sports? And training was it for me. And I got going once I got to college and man, didn't stop. I love this stuff.
But how hard was it, to kind of let go of that dream and passion of like, hey, I'm a baseball player. Like I want to potentially play professional baseball. Like how hard was it to let go of that side of, hey, I'm no longer an athlete. Now I'm coaching athletes to be better than I ever was myself. Like what was it like to let that go?
Honestly, it's hard at first, but I have I have an out. If I, hopefully, when I have kids and they play little league, I could definitely say, I got Tommy John surgery. I was going to play for the Yankees, but so in that sense, that was kind of a forced physical. Hey, you're not going to be playing anymore. But I knew I wasn't like, good enough to play at a high level college or play professionally. And so it was more so just for the enjoyment. Obviously I'm a competitor and you go out and compete and want to win and everything, but I was pretty real with myself of, all right, I could probably try to squeak out a D3 offer somewhere where I could get on a team and keep stringing this thing along, or I could get going on actually making a career for myself. So in that sense, it wasn't too hard. And I knew that I was going to be around the game quite a bit and actually be way more impactful as a coach than I would be trying to really make it as a player. And so with the culmination of getting Tommy John surgery and having a forced career ending, because that was going into my senior year of high school. So it was like, all right, you're not getting recruited if you're not playing. So that was like kind of the nail in the coffin on top of me being real myself of like, all right, I want to go and start doing something productive. And I knew that coaching was what I loved and what I really wanted to do. I had a little bit of experience at that point. So it made a pretty easy decision and one that I would never regret and am extremely happy and content with.
Yeah, I mean that's a tough surgery to go through. But a lot of guys, obviously, within your in y'all sport, that's something that is big. But you hope that you can, limit that injury, limit that surgery as much as you can for a lot of the athletes going forward. But going into coaching and everything that you've gotten into now, what are the parts of coaching that no one kind of prepared you for that you've kind of gone through now?
Man, I would say if I were maybe rephrase it as like things that I maybe learned along the way, I think it would be more so just the different types of people that you're going to work with, the different types of athletes you're going to work with, the different communication styles. Everyone in the classroom setting, you're going to get taught the X's and O's, you're going to get taught the science. And I think this is a very common answer to a question like this, but I truly believe it. Of There's many competent coaches out there in terms of they know, okay, we're building strength. These are the parameters we're going to use. We're building power. These are the parameters we're going to use. But one of the things that you really got to learn along the way is just communicating with athletes, communicating with sport coaches. I think sometimes that is even more important. Maybe not more important, but just as important as communicating with the athletes, because then that influences your rapport with the staff that you work with. If the head coach has a bad taste in their mouth about you, well, then maybe they're throwing slight jabs here and there, with the athletes. And so I think relationships, all in all, is not anything. It's not that no one really prepares you for it, because you're told all the time it's a relational business, it's a service business, but you really don't learn how to do it until you've done it, and that you've gone through the reps of coaching people and saying, all right, man, like I thought this worked when I was working in Florida with this population, and now I'm living out in California working with this population. And yeah, maybe I have to communicate a little bit differently. Maybe I can't make the same references in terms of, oh yeah, it's like maybe this is a bad example, but like you're going to, I don't know, you're talking about snakes, or you're talking about like something that's not out in Cal. I don't know, but right. So just making those relationships, and finding ways to communicate properly with athletes to where you can be effective with your communication, not just saying, hey, I told you to do it, you just didn't do it.
Yeah, I mean that's always a tough one, but there's a huge part that I've heard of a lot as I continue to do these podcasts, is that like relationships and being able to communicate not only to your athletes but to your coaches. And why isn't that something that's being talked about more? As we go through our certifications and the learning process, not just the X's and O's, but like how to communicate with athletes. Them, right? You're not going to learn how to communicate with these people, and that's way further than how the book actually teaches you to be a strength and conditioning coach, because you could have like all the X's and O's, right? You can put together a perfect program, but if they don't trust you and they don't believe in you, ain't nobody gonna do the work. It don't even matter. So why do you think that's not something that's more talked about? When people are getting into this industry, about actually learning how to create relationships and communicate.
Yeah, I think because it's hard to teach, it's so abstract. It's very specific to the people that you're dealing with, and ultimately it just comes down to your interpersonal skills and your ability to sell and get people to buy into what you're asking them to do. I have to say, as a plug for one of my great friends and mentors in the field, his name is Andy Gillum. He works for Sanford Performance. He was one of the guys when I was working at Arizona. He would come out and do an in-service with us all the time. My old mentor at Arizona, Jim, would bring him out all the time. And we would do basically twice a year. He would come in and evaluate our coaching, evaluate our communication with the athletes. We would talk through maybe any issues we were having with sport coaches. And we talk through just really how can we make what we called our shop or our staff better, and provide a better service. And I think that those times that he came in, the relationship that I've developed with him has been so impactful on my career, because again, like I think even at the early stages of your career, you know enough to get the job done. Do you know how to get enough to be elite at your job and have all the answers? No, that obviously takes time and experience, but you know enough. And I think that where some people might end up getting burnt out, or they might end up getting frustrated with the field, is because they're maybe not able to get through to the people that they're dealing with, or they're not able to form those relationships. And now it becomes a lot harder to be here for 12 hours a day if you're not vibing with the people that you're working with, or you're not able to communicate effectively to where you get, feel the fulfillment of, man, I'm really making an impact here. And so with that being said, I think Andy did a great job of teaching us from he's an applied sports psychologist, of what goes into buy-in, what goes into these power dynamics that we have from a staff to or a coach to athlete standpoint, from a coach to coach standpoint, and how can we navigate these things to be the most effective as coaches and then the most effective service people to the people that we're dealing with. And so getting someone in like Andy is I would say is worth his weight in gold. Thanks, Andy.
That shout out to Andy. Appreciate
Yeah.
you for
Shout
helping
out
him
to
out.
Andy.
But I mean, you talk about pouring a lot into your athletes, but there's also the pressure that you had to deal with yourself. Like, how do you manage your own personal life and mental health and not getting that burnout feeling of trying to talk to a coach and get them to understand what you're going through, like trying to get them to buy in? Like, how do you deal with it on your own level?
Man, this is always a hard question for me to answer because I feel like my work life balance is so poor because I just love what I do. And so I don't really ever think about like, man, I got to go into work today or man, I got to deal with so and so coach. Like I said, I feel like I'm a pretty practical person and pretty personal in the sense where I could work through things with coaches, with athletes. And you're always gonna have your frustrations with at work. That not everything is sunshines and rainbows, but I think staying rooted in why do I coach? Why did I get into this field? And focusing also on the positive, like of the successes. I mean, it's kind of like the example of, everyone always remembers the one time that you're upset with them, but never the 100 times that you're happy with them. And so trying to focus on, man, it's really not that bad. I mean, it's the classic example of we get to come into work in shorts, gym shorts and sneakers. Like, it's really not that bad. And obviously that's a plus, but I'm not in this field because I want to wear gym shorts and sneakers. I'm in this field because I want to make an impact and train athletes hard and, and be a great coach. And so just keeping that in the back of my mind is like, hey man, I'm going through maybe a tough time right now that maybe a coach or an athlete's really wearing me out. But ultimately, that's an opportunity to make more impact and really get to the bottom of why is this the case? Maybe they had a bad relationship with their previous strength coach. They had a bad experience. Maybe I am doing something that I don't even know is upsetting them or that is impacting them in a way that I don't see or that is negative that I just don't realize. And so just working with people, it just ends up being so important. And then when you're able to do that, that just makes your job way more fulfilling because you can now make impact. And then now when you're making impact and things are really great, heck, I mean, again, that's fulfilling the dream of why you got in this field. So if you need balance from that, I think you need a different field.
But it does help that we do get to come in shorts and t-shirts and not have to wear
No
a
question.
suit every day.
No question.
That is
And,
one
I- and
plus.
I'm
But
and I'm I will say I'm so grateful that I got into college men's basketball in the post suit era, and now I can
yes,
just wear just the polo and not have to pack multiple suits for a road trip because I've heard stories of yeah, you just you throw it on and just Febreze it and you're back at it the next day. Thank God.
glad you don't have to do that, man. But
Yeah.
how do you measure success as a coach beyond wins, scholarships, or PRs? What do you consider success?
So the way I usually phrase this, and I'll give a my measuring stick, so to speak, is hopefully you coach at a really high level, and you have athletes that go on to play professionally, or even maybe not playing professionally, but end up staying active afterwards. My measuring stick of success is that I've made such an impact on said athlete that after the fact, when they're no longer needed to train with me, it's no longer a requirement. They still want to come back, and whether that's for their pro career, they're coming back. Hey, during the summer, I want to train with you. Hey, I'm a just a regular person now, but I'm really thinking about getting on a multivitamin. What are your thoughts on that? Just showing that respect of, hey, I respect your opinion. You've made an impact to me to where maybe I see value in continuing to train as an average person, or I'm now tasked with I have a contract that I need to perform for, and so I'm going to invest in the best sports performance coach possible or the best coaches to help me fulfill this contract. In basketball, go ball out in the NBA or ball out in Europe and continue to play this game for money. If they want to come back and train with me because I provide such a great service, that's like the ultimate test for me. I mean, obviously, you get excited about making progress, and that's something that I definitely take ownership of. Ultimately, like the job that we're assigned to in our job description, like we have to make progress, right? And if you're not astute to that, then okay, well, you're not even just doing your job. That's the bare minimum. You have to still coach people up and try to and get results. But that ultimately doesn't really measure your impact as a coach. And I think again, there's coaches a dime a dozen that will know the right method to make you lose body fat or to get you stronger. But it's a matter of who can do that most effectively. And when you're not tied to Kara hours and saying, hey, you got to show up at this time, they still want to come back and train with you. That to me is the most, the most fulfilling and the most, the biggest measuring stick for me.
Yeah, with that measuring stick though, I mean, there's a lot of things that come into play of like why we stay into coaching. What's that one moment in your coaching career that, reminded you why we do what we do and kept you here?
Man, I feel like it's daily. I mean, you're gonna have sessions that are highs, you're gonna have sessions that are lows. I wouldn't say that there's one thing that has been so impactful of like, man, I've thought about quitting the field and this situation was really a turning point for me. Like that's never been the case for me. I've always had a fire and a passion for the field and for what I do. And so I would say just, having a really effective session where everyone's getting after everyone's you're making progress and everyone's really enjoying the training. Obviously, it's not just hey, we're all happy, you're lucky. Like, yeah, it's sometimes it's great when the athlete is laid out on the floor because you kicked their butt, but that's productive, right? Sometimes, and so in the sense of man, we really moved the needle today. That I would say in short would be what keeps me in the field of all right, like we're actually doing something here. We're building a little bit as a group, and we're being impactful. And I don't think that it really takes much for me because again, I love what I do, so I don't really need much convincing to stay in it.
I love it. I love it. So this question comes from one of our former guests, Coach Scott Leach up in Rhode Island. And it is, if you look at the four P's, which are pay, personal life, progression, and sense of purpose, out of the four P's, which one would be your main priority or main focus if you were to look somewhere else to go?
Um, so you said pay, progression,
Pay,
purpose,
progression, personal
and
life, and purpose.
I would say you broke up. I think you said purpose, but I would say purpose. I mean, I think it really makes a really really big difference for me in terms of again like I really love what I do and I want to be able to do it at the highest level, and that's not from a highest level of power four, highest level of pay, like I just want to be able to make the biggest impact possible. And so making sure that whatever move I make fulfills that value and that purpose is really important to me because I think with you being really competent at your job and there's obviously a little bit of luck involved in that and continuing to learn and continue to progress as a coach, the things like pay will follow, right? If you're really great at what you do, eventually you're going to get paid for it. At least I'm a believer of that. I think from a personal life standpoint, again, if you're moving jobs just to have more work life balance, personal life freedom to go out on a Friday night, like again, you probably want to pick a different field. And so really having that purpose and being supported in that purpose is really important to me as a coach because again, you could be on a staff where maybe the head coach that you work for really doesn't value the area that you work in. And so that's going to be really hard to make a very large impact, or at least it'll be a very uphill battle. And so if you can go somewhere where you can fulfill your purpose, I think that's the most fulfilling because I think that's the most sustainable because ultimately money can always run out dry and there's always somewhere else where they can maybe pay you equal, but it's not always that you're going to be supported and you're not always going to be able to fulfill your purpose. So I think that's one of the most important and most sustainable ones for sure.
But you got me ready, fired up, about ready to go come in and hit a lift with you. But so if you had to ask our next guest one question, what would it be?
Oh, man, put me on the spot here. Let's see. I like because I don't really like asking most people about like sets and reps and things of that nature because I think it's so specific to your situation and where and the coaches that you learned under. I just always like to ask people why do you do what you do and let that go wherever that takes them because I think that you can when you start to ask people of what are maybe their specific values or it ends up being like a pretty boxed answer Whereas just like why do you go do what you do? Why do you show up to work every day? Like, what about it? And then go wherever you want with it. Because I think then that leaves it open ended to where people can really start to get on with talking and reflecting and saying, man, like this is why I do what I do. And I think that that keeps you grounded in showing up every day and making a difference.
So if you had to answer that in short, why do you do what you do?
I think it just comes down to the impact, and I just love, interacting with the athletes, interacting with the coaches, and it's such a blanket term to make an impact, but I think that that can come in various ways. I mean, I even told the guys just the other day when we were talking about stretching and foam rolling, right? It's a brand new team. We had one returner, so this is brand new. Everyone's brand new to me, and we're going over foam rolling, and I'm like, look, at the end of it, I was like, look, I probably have repeated like 99% of the things I just said have been a repeat of what you've heard in the past. But if there's the off chance that 1% of that stuck with you, or you learned 1% something new, then that's a win for me. And over time, when you spend more time with people, then those 1% start to compile and, gain interest, so to speak. And then now you're really making a big difference. And so just that opportunity to come in and maybe make someone's day better, maybe help someone progress physically towards their goals, or maybe even just putting a smile on someone's face. I mean, like just somebody coming in, maybe they've had a bad day and they walk into the weight room and you're excited to see them, and then that turns a 180 for them. Like, that's the most fulfilling thing to me. If I want to see big squat numbers and I want to see big bench numbers, I could go to YouTube and watch Dmitry Klokov take two of me and throw it over his head. Like, it's not about that. It's about making a difference and really being impactful for others. Because I love what I do, and I love every like little bit about it, and so being able to share that passion and hopefully make an impact on somebody else, not because it's my passion, but utilize my passion as a vehicle to uplift somebody else or help someone else, you know in their passion. Because 9 times out of 10, it's not the weight room, it's they're here to play basketball is their passion. Maybe basketball's not even their passion, but they're really passionate about human interaction and just someone being there for them. Cool. If I can make an impact of 1% every single day, I'm cool with that, and hopefully it's more.
Coach, I can already tell you, you made an impact with this just doing this podcast, man. I appreciate you, Coach, so much for coming on
Thank
today.
you.
I'm not going to take up any more of your time because you've already dropped a whole bunch of knowledge for a bunch of listeners out there. So, Coach, thank you, and we appreciate you here on the Coach's Compass today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
All right.